I'm talking about Elon Musk. He is building a town, and guess where it is located? In Texas.
Elon Musk is known for pushing boundaries, whether in space, AI, or electric vehicles. But while everyone is busy watching his latest tweets about Dogecoin or Tesla stock fluctuations, he has quietly been working on something that's making Wall Street nervous. And no, it's not rockets or artificial intelligence. It's real estate, more specifically, an entire town he's building from the ground up in Texas. But what's buried in the permit applications is what's truly surprising. What is Elon working on? Musk's latest project is not only about affordable housing, but it's the modern version of something we haven't seen in over a century yet. According to reports from the Wall Street Journal, Musk has acquired over 3,500 acres of land in Bastrop County, Texas. His goal is to build a town called Snail Brook, a place where employees from Tesla, SpaceX, and the Boring Company can live and work. At first glance, it sounds like a great idea. Cheap housing close to work, shorter commutes, and a self-sustaining community. But history tells a different story. Over 100 years ago, Henry Ford tried something similar, creating entire towns for his workers. These towns provided housing, stores, and even schools, all controlled by the company. But instead of being a worker's paradise, it quickly turned into a nightmare. Employees found themselves trapped with no escape from the company's control. Eventually, it led to riots and strikes, and Ford's vision collapsed. Musk, however, thinks he can make it work. According to leaked documents, Snail Brook isn't just a few houses near a factory. It's a fully planned town with schools, stores, private utilities, and even its own police force. If this sounds like a futuristic utopia, it might be, except for one major problem. What happens when your employer also owns your home? Think about it. You don't just work for the company. You live in the company's town, shop at the company's stores, and send your kids to the company's schools. Your entire life is wrapped around a corporation that controls not just your paycheck, but your entire environment. And if things go south, if you get fired, if wages stagnate, if conditions worsen, where exactly do you go? Do you just pack up and leave, or are you stuck, hoping that your boss is feeling generous enough to let you stay? It's not just a hypothetical problem. In traditional housing markets, if you lose a job, you at least have the option to find another one while keeping your home. But in Snail Brook, losing your job might mean losing your house overnight. There's no separation between your personal and professional life. It all blends into one big corporate ecosystem where Musk's companies hold all the power. And let's not forget who we're talking about. Musk isn't exactly known for being the most lenient employer. Reports of extreme working conditions, long hours, and intense performance expectations have already surfaced at Tesla and SpaceX. Now imagine living in a town where your landlord is the same person who demands you work 80-hour weeks. Where do you complain? Who do you turn to? If the town's utilities, stores, and even law enforcement are tied to the company, is there any real oversight, or is it just Musk's personal sandbox? The more you think about it, the more it starts looking less like a utopia and more like a high-tech version of an old problem, corporate feudalism. Of course, Musk's fans argue that this is different. They say he's a visionary, that he's trying to solve the housing crisis for his employees, and that Snail Brook could be a model for future cities. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is the next step in urban planning, a way to create sustainable, worker-friendly communities. But history suggests otherwise. When companies gain too much control over workers' lives, things rarely end well. The hidden control behind the cheap housing. One of the biggest selling points of Musk's company town is the price of housing. Reports suggest homes could be available for as little as $110,000, a shocking price considering the skyrocketing real estate market in Texas. In an economy where even a modest home can cost triple that, it almost sounds too good to be true, but there's a catch. Workers living in Snail Brook won't actually own their homes in the traditional sense. Instead, their housing will be tied to their employment. If an employee quits or gets fired, they'll have just 30 days to vacate their home. That's right, if you lose your job, then you'll lose your house. It's like renting, except your landlord is also your boss, and instead of a lease, your employment contract determines whether you have a roof over your head. This setup creates a power imbalance that economists are warning about. When a company controls your paycheck, your home, your local stores, and even your kids' schools, you're no longer just an employee, you're part of a controlled microeconomy. This means workers could feel pressured to stay in their jobs, even under unfair conditions, simply because leaving would mean losing everything. While the lower housing costs might seem like an attractive deal, they come with an invisible leash. A traditional mortgage gives homeowners a level of financial independence, allowing them to switch jobs or move freely. In Snail Brook, that freedom is replaced with dependency. Employees won't just be working for a paycheck, they'll be working to keep their place in the town itself. That's a setup that benefits the employer far more than the worker. The economic impact of Snail Brook. Snail Brook's impact is already shaking up the local economy. Since news of Musk's plans leaked, home prices in Bastrop County have already jumped over 6% and land prices have skyrocketed by 40%. Regular home buyers who were once able to afford property in the area are now being pushed out, as demand driven by Musk's developments causes prices to rise. Local businesses and long-time residents are also feeling the pressure, with some facing higher property taxes and an increased cost of living due to the sudden surge in demand. For Tesla workers, the math is concerning. The average salary for a Tesla employee is around $47,000 a year, while the median home price in the area is now over $425,000. Without Musk's company housing, many of these employees wouldn't be able to afford a home at all. But taking that housing means they're essentially locked into the company, dependent on their employer for both income and shelter. Economists call this corporate feudalism, a system where workers are economically tied to their employers in a way that limits their freedom. While supporters argue that Snail Brook provides a much-needed solution to the housing crisis, critics warn that it is a short-term fix with long-term consequences. Instead of empowering workers with financial independence, it keeps them in a system where their basic needs are controlled by their employer. Is Musk's vision sustainable? While Musk's plan sounds ambitious, it raises serious ethical and economic concerns. Can Snail Brook succeed where past company towns failed? Will workers actually benefit from lower-cost housing, or will they end up trapped in a system with no way out? The biggest question is whether Musk's vision can scale. If Snail Brook is just the beginning, will other companies follow suit? And if more company towns pop up across the country, what does that mean for the future of housing and workers' rights? Musk has always been a disruptor, but this time he's changing the way people live. Whether that's for better or worse remains to be seen. When company towns start popping up, the local economy takes a hit in ways most people don't see coming. Traditional landlords lose tenants as workers opt for cheaper company-owned housing. Small businesses struggle to compete with company-run stores that have built-in advantages. And when property taxes for everyone else in the area go up, making it harder for non-company employees to afford living there. When one entity starts controlling a huge portion of the housing and commerce, the local economy bends to its will. It's a complete reshaping of economic power. The $10,000 home revelation. Now, let's talk about those $10,000 homes that have been making headlines. Yes, they exist, but there's a lot Musk and the media aren't telling you. These boxable homes look incredible in promotional videos. Sleek, modern 375 square foot living spaces packed with Tesla-style technology and an instant setup process. Sounds like a dream, right? That's because it's meant to. Here's the part they don't highlight, the $10,000 price tag. That's just the deposit. The actual cost of one of these compact homes is closer to $60,000. But even that's not the real catch. The biggest financial trap lies in the land these homes sit on. Owning a boxable home doesn't mean you own the land beneath it. In Snail Brook, that land belongs to the company, which means workers paying for these homes are essentially tenants, not homeowners. Meanwhile, Wall Street firms have been watching all of this unfold and quietly buying up land around these developments. The numbers are staggering. Land that was selling for $20,000 per acre just last year is now being sold for $80,000 per acre. The real money is in the land, and Musk is playing the long game. They might spend years making payments on their tiny house, only to be kicked out if they leave their job with no legal claim to the land they've been living on. Even if a worker wanted to relocate their boxable home elsewhere, that's easier said than done. Moving one isn't as simple as loading it onto a truck and heading off to a new location. There are zoning laws, land costs, and infrastructure requirements to consider. In the end, what's marketed as an affordable, flexible housing option is actually another way to keep workers financially dependent on the company. The hidden land grab. While everyone's distracted by flashy $10,000 home headlines, Wall Street is playing a much bigger game. Investment firms have been quietly buying up thousands of acres of land surrounding these company towns, and the price inflation is insane. Just last year, land in these areas was going for around $20,000 per acre. Now, some plots are selling for $80,000 or more. But here's the clever part. Musk's companies aren't selling you the land with your new tiny home. Instead, they're leasing it to you. And that lease agreement? Buried in the fine print, you'll find that while you technically own your home, you're paying monthly rent for the land. And that rent? It's subject to annual increases, meaning your cost of living will keep rising. But it gets worse. If you ever want to sell your home, you can't just sell it to anyone. You have to sell it back to the company at whatever price they decide. This isn't home ownership in the traditional sense. It's a controlled housing system that benefits the company at every turn, a network of private cities. This isn't just about a single company town or some budget-friendly homes. Take a step back and look at where Musk is actually buying land. Every major land purchase connects directly to his larger empire, near SpaceX launch sites, along planned, boring company tunnels, next to future Tesla facilities. They're calculated moves to create a network of privately controlled cities. And thanks to Texas laws, Musk can essentially run these private towns with minimal interference. Unlike traditional cities, which have elected officials and government oversight, company towns operate under the rules set by the corporation. That means policies, utilities, and even law enforcement could fall under Musk's control. In a state that favors business-friendly laws, the amount of autonomy he could have is staggering. The future of Musk's company towns. While it's too early to say how this will all play out, history gives us a few clues. The idea of a company town isn't new. Ford tried it a century ago, and it ended in riots and strikes. Musk might believe he's found a way to make it work, but the challenges are immense. If these towns grow, they could redefine urban living as we know it. But at what cost? Are workers truly benefiting, or are they walking into a system designed to keep them financially dependent? And as Musk's empire expands, how much control over everyday life is too much? These are the questions we should be asking as we watch his vision unfold. We're talking about private utilities, private infrastructure, and even private governance. This master plan, filed in 3 different counties so far, shows something unprecedented. Musk is creating what his team calls autonomous development zones. Think of it like a Tesla gigafactory, but for entire cities. The timing of this move is not random. The US is currently short about 7.2 million homes, and that deficit is growing by another 200,000 homes every single year. Musk is positioning himself to reshape the housing market entirely. But more importantly, his team has already calculated something Wall Street investors have known for years. Control the land, and you control everything that follows. This housing shortage is a new investment model. In markets where housing demand heavily outpaces supply, property values surge, and rental prices skyrocket. Investors who recognize these trends early are securing properties in areas primed for growth, not just in Texas, but in states like Florida, Arizona, and Nevada, where population booms are putting pressure on outdated housing infrastructure. The key to shortage investing is buying in markets where long-term demand is locked in. That means areas with strong job growth, major corporate expansions, and infrastructure investments that will fuel future development. This is why cities experiencing rapid migration, whether due to affordability, tax advantages, or business-friendly policies, are becoming the prime targets for real estate capital. The Texas land war. While everyone has been focused on Musk's so-called $10,000 homes, he's been executing what might be the biggest land acquisition in Texas history. Through a network of shell companies and private trusts, Musk has quietly amassed thousands of acres across the state, enough to reshape entire counties. And if you follow the paper trail through county records, the scale of this operation is shocking. In just the last 18 months, 47 different LLCs have been involved in land purchases linked to Musk's companies. These acquisitions are highly strategic. They include key water rights purchases, filings for mixed-use development permits, and something called development corridors. These corridors are carefully selected areas that connect industrial zones, transportation hubs, and future infrastructure projects. Essentially, Musk is laying the groundwork for an ecosystem where he controls not just housing, but roads, utilities, and even local governance. This level of control raises serious concerns about oversight and accountability. With so much land concentrated in the hands of one billionaire, local governments could find themselves bending to his demands, whether it's for zoning changes, tax breaks, or exemptions from regulations. It also puts small landowners and local businesses in a vulnerable position. As property values surge due to these purchases, long-time residents may be priced out, while independent businesses struggle to compete with Musk-owned developments that dominate the market. The three waves of land takeover. Elon Musk's quiet takeover of Texas land isn't just about building cheap homes or setting up another Tesla factory. It's a strategic move that's reshaping entire regions, and the real winners are the investors who know where to look. The land rush follows a clear pattern, and it's been seen before in areas where Musk's companies have expanded. First, major corporations move in, acquiring massive parcels of land under different LLCs. This creates an artificial scarcity, driving up prices and making it harder for independent buyers to compete. Next, mid-sized developers swoop in, securing plots for commercial and residential developments, banking on the demand that will inevitably follow. Finally, the third wave arrives. Individual investors who know how to position themselves before the market peaks. This is where the biggest profits are made. The key isn't buying directly in the development zone, where prices have already surged. Instead, the sweet spot lies just outside the core expansion area, in what's known as the ripple zones. These are the areas 3 to 5 miles out, where zoning laws still allow single-family housing and prices remain low. As infrastructure expands and demand spills over, property values in these zones climb steadily, allowing investors to make significant gains without the upfront costs of prime real estate. For long-time residents, however, this cycle is a double-edged sword. While some landowners can cash out at higher prices, others find themselves priced out of their own communities as property taxes rise and affordable housing options shrink. What starts as an investment opportunity for some becomes a displacement crisis for others, as the very growth that drives profits also reshapes entire neighborhoods in ways that benefit the few while making life harder for many. How property prices explode in ripple zones. History has shown this pattern in action. Around Musk's previous developments, property prices followed a predictable timeline. Before an official announcement, the market remained stable with gradual appreciation. But once plans were leaked, land values jumped by 40% in 6 months, forcing out smaller buyers who could no longer afford the rising costs. Within 2 years, properties that once sold for $200,000 had nearly doubled in price, transforming affordable neighborhoods into high-priced investment zones. Those who had been living in these areas for years suddenly found themselves unable to keep up, while outside investors moved in to capitalize on the boom. This cycle happens in real estate whenever major employers and infrastructure projects come into play, but Musk's approach operates on a much larger scale. He's building entire self-contained economies with housing, utilities, and commercial hubs. When a single company controls so much of an area, the local economy starts revolving around it. Workers become more dependent on their employer, and small businesses struggle to survive unless they fit into the ecosystem Musk has designed. Infrastructure plays a major role in these land grabs. It's not just about homes, but also about securing water rights, energy sources, and transportation routes before the public realizes what's happening. Musk's companies move strategically, gaining control over these critical resources early, allowing them to shape the market before anyone else can react. Bastrop County is a prime example. Permits for mixed-use developments were quietly filed months before Musk's expansion plans became public. By the time people noticed, property values had already started climbing. Investors who recognize these patterns early have a chance to benefit, while others get priced out. The key is watching for zoning changes, infrastructure funding, and environmental impact studies, signs that a major shift is on the horizon. The disruption of DOGE and the government shakeup. While everyone focuses on DOGE's market moves, Musk's Twitter antics, or Tesla's latest valuation, something far bigger is happening. It's not just about corporate control over small towns or ambitious housing projects. It's about a fundamental transformation in American governance, one that mirrors the disruption Musk brought to industries like automotive and aerospace. The federal government has long been plagued by inefficiency, bureaucracy, and a lack of transparency. The DOGE initiative, however, is injecting a Musk-style speed and efficiency into government processes, exposing inefficiencies that have festered for decades. This isn't a theory, but these things are happening in real time. The systems put in place during the Obama administration to track financial flows are now being leveraged to shine a light on government spending, revealing mismanagement and corruption in ways previously unthinkable. What this means for the future of government. For decades, the US government has been notoriously slow to adapt, hindered by outdated systems and layers of red tape. DOGE is turning that on its head. By accelerating transparency and efficiency, it's challenging the very nature of how the government operates. The revelations about US aid and the murky financial pathways of government funding have shattered long-standing assumptions. What was once dismissed as conspiracy theories, claims of a deep state manipulating policies, are now being validated with hard data. The same way Tesla shattered the auto industry's complacency and SpaceX revolutionized space travel, DOGE is forcing an evolution in government. The response from traditional politicians and bureaucrats: predictable resistance. Much like legacy automakers scoffed at electric vehicles before being forced to adapt, politicians entrenched in outdated systems are scrambling to maintain control. But as history shows, disruption is inevitable when inefficiencies are exposed. The implications for America's future. If DOGE succeeds in its mission, the United States could emerge as the most efficient and responsive government on the planet. This isn't just about reducing bureaucracy, but about making the government function in a way that actually serves its people. Imagine a system that swiftly responds to citizens' needs, capitalizes on technological advances, and ensures wealth creation isn't bottlenecked by slow-moving policies. The idea of a transparent government that genuinely prioritizes efficiency was, until recently, a pipe dream. Now, it's becoming a tangible possibility. With DOGE set to conclude its mission on America's 2050 birthday, the timeline is aggressive, but necessary. The goal is not to create more bureaucracy, but to streamline what already exists, making government more accountable and effective. though the change is uncomfortable. We've seen it time and time again. Whether it was Tesla employees struggling to adapt to a high-speed work culture, or legacy automakers resisting electric vehicles, disruption always meets opposition. The government is no different. The hysteria we're witnessing, especially from political figures who thrive on the inefficiencies of the current system, is a clear indication of just how impactful DOGE's transparency efforts are. Just as SpaceX forced the aerospace industry to rethink reusable rockets and Tesla made self-driving cars a reality, DOGE is forcing government institutions to reckon with their own inefficiencies. The pushback is expected, but the sheer panic from entrenched political figures only further confirms that this movement is onto something big. A glimpse into the endgame. The story arcs of SpaceX, Tesla, and X follow a similar pattern. Enter a stagnant industry, disrupt it, and force rapid evolution. DOGE is now following this same playbook. Those who study Musk's impact across industries can see the writing on the wall. We're witnessing the early stages of what could be the most significant governmental transformation in modern history. While critics scramble to downplay DOGE's influence, the reality is clear. The government is being forced to evolve. Whether politicians like it or not, the transparency wave is here, and it's not slowing down. The coming years will determine just how much of an impact DOGE ultimately has. But one thing is certain, the days of unchecked inefficiency are numbered. One of the biggest reasons for the government's sluggish response to change is its reliance on outdated infrastructure. Many government agencies are still running on software from the 1990s, with paper-based processes slowing down everything from voter registration to financial auditing. DOGE represents a shift toward modernization. By leveraging blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, the inefficiencies of government can be systematically dismantled. Take procurement processes, for example. The US government spends billions of dollars annually on contracts, yet many of these transactions remain opaque. Fraud, waste, and inefficiency run rampant because there has never been a way to audit these deals in real time. With blockchain-based tracking, every dollar spent can be monitored, making it nearly impossible for bad actors to manipulate the system. Musk's track record of innovation provides a roadmap for what DOGE could achieve. When he took over Tesla, electric cars were seen as a joke, expensive, slow, and impractical. Now they dominate the auto market, with even legacy brands scrambling to catch up. SpaceX faced similar skepticism, yet it now leads the charge in space exploration, making NASA's once unquestionable dominance look outdated. DOGE is applying this same disruptive approach to governance. Bureaucracy, like the legacy auto industry, has been complacent for too long. By introducing transparency, accountability, and speed, DOGE is forcing politicians to adapt or be left behind. The public's role in this evolution. Ultimately, no government transformation can succeed without public support. People have long felt disconnected from their government, viewing it as an inefficient machine that serves itself rather than the citizens. DOGE has the potential to shift that narrative by putting power back into the hands of the people. Imagine a future where every citizen has real-time access to government spending reports, where voting systems are incorruptible due to blockchain verification, and where public funds are allocated based on AI-driven efficiency rather than political favoritism. This is entirely possible with today's technology. If the US government successfully implements these changes, the ripple effects could be massive. Other countries, especially those plagued by corruption, will have no choice but to follow suit or risk being left behind in the digital governance revolution. Already, we see signs of this happening, with nations exploring blockchain-based voting, AI-driven public administration, and digital currency-driven economies. The next decade could mark a turning point not just for the US government, but for global politics. Those who resist transparency will find themselves isolated, while those who embrace it will lead the next era of governance. This shift toward digital governance is unfolding alongside a broader demographic transformation. As technology reshapes government transparency and efficiency, population movements are redrawing the economic map of the US. People are no longer bound to traditional business hubs, and states that offer lower living costs and business-friendly policies are reaping the benefits. This migration trend is about the future of work, governance, and urban development. And that's exactly where Musk's vision comes into play: the migration effect. People are leaving expensive coastal cities and moving to states where housing is still relatively affordable, at least for now. California and New York are seeing an exodus of residents, while Texas, Florida, and the Southeast are absorbing hundreds of thousands of new arrivals each year. The numbers don't lie. The cost of living, remote work flexibility, and state tax policies are driving a historic relocation trend. Musk's developments fit into this bigger movement perfectly. He strategically placed these developments in regions where migration data already signals demand. This gives Tesla workers a place to live and creates an ecosystem that attracts talent, secures long-term housing growth, and sets the foundation for corporate-driven urban expansion. The housing crisis isn't disappearing. If anything, it's becoming the foundation for a new real estate era where affordability is a relative term. Investors who understand these trends are positioning themselves now, knowing that the next decade will be defined by housing demand outpacing supply. The average home buyer is competing with data-driven, institutional investors who treat housing like stocks. Musk's private cities may be the most visible part of this shift, but they are just one piece of a much bigger picture. Whether through corporate-controlled housing, large-scale rental conversions, or private infrastructure replacing public governance, the way people live is being rewritten in real time. While everyone's caught up in market trends, Musk is quietly reshaping entire cities. Whether this is innovation at its finest or corporate control on a whole new level, one thing is clear: this is all about power. But the real question is, who benefits the most? Let us know what you think.